What's that? Yeah, it was decades ago. Yeah, this didn't happen like last year. This was quite a while ago, but I am halfway through my private pilot's license, and it got put on pause when our first child was born. And I'm still looking forward to picking that back up someday. And what about you?
I was a nurse and we used to go down to Let's Make a Deal as a family. That was our family fun. We dress all up. And I wanted to watch your driving syndrome. Let's Make a Deal.
Awesome. All right, if you need a deal, you know who you go to. All righty. Oh, wow. That is cool. Any others? No, it can be anything that others don't know about you. Painting. Wow. That is cool. Anyone else? Interesting to find out about one another. And this is one of the benefits of not just going to potluck, but inviting somebody over to your house for a Sabbath afternoon lunch. You get to learn things that you never knew about people before. Speaking of Mount St. Helens, my wife and I visited Mount St. Helens. While we were there, we were talking to a guy who was in the forestry service when Mount St. Helens blew, and he was on the other side of the mountain when the mountain blew. So it blew in the the right direction. Yeah. And he said when it blew, it created a sound vacuum that, like, for a while there, like, they could not hear anything. It was just whoosh, the power of that explosion. Yeah. So, interesting things. Oh, great, this is working now. All right, with conflict resolution, the majority of couples that they interviewed, 78% report that they go out of their way to avoid conflict in their relationship. What do you think of this strategy? The problem is that conflict is just part of relationships. When you have individuals that see things differently, you're going to run into some sort of conflict or disagreement. It's any relationship that you have, and you cannot, it is a misnomer to believe that you can run from conflict. You can't run from it, because where there is another person, you are inevitably going to run into disagreements. The happiest couples, according to the research here by Prepare and Enrich, the happiest couples that they've gone through are not couples that have no conflict. It's the couples who know how to work through conflict or manage conflict. And so this is what today's program is all about. It's learning to reframe conflict so that it's not something that you have to be afraid of and avoid, but it's something that you naturally are able to work through together. And one of the critical ways that any couple learns to work through conflict is by looking at conflict from a totally different perspective. How do most couples look at conflict? Yeah, don't let it happen, right? But why? Why do they look at conflict and say, I want to avoid it, I want to run from it, I don't want it? Why? And say that again, Larissa? Oh, yeah, sure. They don't do it right. But why don't they do it right? The framework that the majority of couples who don't do conflict right look at conflict through, like the lens they see conflict through, is win-lose. Have you ever seen conflict that way? There's there can only be one winner, and it better be me, right? Or you go to somebody, man, I lost that fight. Win, lose never produces a win for either partner. Because in a conflict, when you're looking at win-lose, somebody has to be right. If somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong, the relationship always loses. So what's the way that you reframe this? You reframe conflicts to be we're looking for a win-win solution. And when you're looking for a win-win solution, you're both working together as a team, and the problem is out there. Rather than the problem being your spouse or the problem being the person you're in conflict with, the problem is out there. Go ahead. So others can hear.
Our phrases, we all are different and unique and have different opinions. So there's not a bad thing. Now, when our opinions are coming in conflict, it's important which direction goes their conflict. Towards the resolution, so find a middle way.
Yes.
Or it goes through argumentation and tension.
Yes.
So it's difficult to define the word conflict in this situation. I think it's important after the static moment of difference of opinion, which direction we go.
Yes. Now, when you come to a difference of opinion, there's some really helpful perspectives that you can bring into any conflict or any discussion that will help you reach success with whoever you're trying to work through difficulties with. And here's where you need to enter any discussion, and that is, I am partially blind in every situation. If you can enter into every discussion or every relationship with that truth just running through you, that you do not see everything, it will produce a bit of curiosity to realize that your partner is an asset, not a liability. When you enter into a relationship or any sort of discussion, and in your mind, you see everything perfectly from beginning to end, if they see things differently than you, are they an asset or a liability? They're a liability. You're a block. You're somebody who's keeping me from moving in the direction I want to go because I see everything. So in order for you to have success in conflict resolution, you've got to take a new truth. And that truth is that I was born blind and I live my entire life without seeing the entire picture. You can bring that truth and improve your relationship with God. Any of you heard about the frog? Did I ever tell the illustration of the frog that lived at the bottom of the well? Okay, there's a little frog. He lives at the bottom of the well. Just a warning. You'll probably hear this in a sermon someday. I don't know when it's going to come, but you'll probably hear it. So there's a little frog that lives at the very bottom of a well, and he was born there, he'll die there. He lived his entire life at the bottom of this well. Well, along comes a bird, and the bird perches on the side of the well, and he enters a conversation with the little frog, and pretty soon they both begin talking about the sky, and they get into this heated debate about how big the sky really is. The frog told the bird that the sky was very small. From his perspective, he could hop from one end of the sky to the other. And the bird said, oh no, the sky is, I've never seen the end. I've been traveling from one end to the other and I've never reached either end. It's as massive as you could ever think. Now, who was right? Well, from our perspective, the bird was right. The frog was simply speaking from his perspective. The issue or the conflict came because the frog did not believe that there could be anything that existed outside of his perspective. I see everything, and that's all there is. So if you can come to the place where you are willing to admit that you do not see everything, then when somebody comes with a different perspective, it's an opportunity, a real opportunity for you to see something that you would have never seen before. And you want to hear something funny about God? Have you guys ever heard of opposites attract? How many of you have found that to be true in your relationship? Okay. What does that mean? That means that God maybe put somebody with you so that you wouldn't be as blind as you are. So that you could see a broader picture than you would have seen were you all alone. Your spouse is a wonderful gift from God to broaden your vision for you to be able to see and accomplish much more than you could have ever accomplished alone. So in every difficulty and every conflict that you come into, come to that conflict with that positive view that I don't know everything, I don't see everything, but God has given me my spouse so that I can see more than I could have seen alone. There's also a healthy balance to that. You know what the healthy balance is? Your spouse doesn't see everything either. So you need each other. And if you can come to that together, it's helpful. Let me go back up here and check to see what else we have. I don't want to miss anything. Happiness is not the absence of conflict, but flows from the ability to cope with it. Studies show marital happiness is more related to how conflict is handled and not the number of disagreements experienced by a couple. Conflict can be an opportunity in disguise. When handled well, it can increase understanding, intimacy, and trust. Now, one of the things that Prepare and Enrich has done that really helps couples move through conflict is this 10 steps to resolving conflict. Who did not get them? Okay. This is also in your workbook. I'll give 2 here, 2 down there. I'll come back for you, Magda. Thank you, Lee. Sounds great. 10 steps to resolving conflict helps couples to turn the conflict from personal to something objective that they can both look at. And I'd like to go through these steps with you that will help you as you resolve conflict. And if you're finding yourself in a place where you're struggling over a single issue or multiple issues, pulling out this conflict sheet and going through it together will really, really help. So what's the first thing that you need to do if you're going to start resolving conflict? What's step number 1? Yes, to agree on a time and a what? And a place. Why do you need to agree on a time and a place? So you can talk about it? What's that? Busy life schedule?
If you do it then, it might not end well.
Exactly. That's right. Grocery store is not a good place to argue. Not every place and not every time is the appropriate time and place to work out or resolve an issue. You may want to work it out with the person, but they may not be ready in that time or in that place. It may be in front of the kids. It may be at a public place. The person may be totally exhausted and not able to think and process. One or both of you may be so emotionally tense that the conversation would not be productive if you both did the conversation right there, right then. So the very first step is to both step back and say, is this the right time and the right place to have this conversation, and schedule it. Now some of you are saying, Pastor, are you saying we need to actually schedule a fight? No. No, you don't schedule a fight. Schedule a time to resolve a conflict. And if you're scheduling a time to resolve a conflict, you're going to find a place where you're not going to be distracted. You're going to find a time where you're not emotionally charged. You're going to find a time where you have enough time to be able to work through this. And you need 30 or more minutes to be able to work through this. Small things can take 30 or more minutes. Spirit of Prophecy actually says that if pride were put away, it would take just 5 minutes to resolve any conflict. But oftentimes pride gets in the way. We've got to take some time to work through it. So find some time where you can spend 30 or more minutes looking intently at this conflict. Okay, set a time for discussion. What's number 2? Now, why do you think define the problem is important? That is so important.
You may each be arguing about a different problem, so you're not even talking about the same thing.
How many times I have seen this over and over where couples will sit down and they'll be fighting, but they're fighting about 2 different things. And it's not even the same problem. How are you going to resolve a problem if you're not trying to tackle the same problem together? So number 2 is define the problem. What do you do if you get stuck on number 2 and he says it's this problem and she says, well, I want to define that problem? Boom! You have to schedule 2 separate appointments for the 2 separate problems. And the reason is when you begin layering problems on top of each other, you create what's called conflict mountain. And conflict mountain guarantees that you won't be able to solve any problems. So here's a rule. If you're going to solve problems, you have to solve them one at a what? One at a time. You can't resolve 2 or more problems. It just doesn't work. So one of them is going to have to go on the back burner. One of them is going to have to come to the front, and that's the one that you focus on. And you'll need to agree on which one it is. That may be a difficult step, especially if the 2 of you see 2 different problems. But before you go to any other step, you have to define what the problem is. And I would suggest, if you really want to make this clear and really want a solution, write it out and then switch notes so that you see what the other person wrote. Because sometimes there could be a misunderstanding even in this phase of agreeing what the actual problem is. So write the problem down and agree that what was written down, this is what we're going to try and solve together. That's step 2. What is step 3? Say that again. Okay, a good way to put it is confession. What's another word?
Identify the cause.
Yes, but there's something even more important than just identifying the cause. Yes. Owning or taking responsibility. Who needs to take responsibility? This is really critical because in every problem, in every problem that comes up, there are 2 people who have contributed to that problem in some way. If only one person is at fault and the other person is completely innocent, you're living in probably not reality. So in every problem, if you're going to find a resolution, both individuals need to be accountable. So I see step number 3 as accountability. You've got to take personal accountability for your part. And super important. Now, when it says list the ways you each contribute to the problem, if you can start off listing the ways you yourself contribute to the problem rather than starting off with listing the ways your partner contributes to the problem. If you can make that an individual thing, that would be great. You may need help from the person you're in conflict with, and I can guarantee they're standing by to help you understand where you went wrong. But don't start off pointing each other's fault. Write down what you see is your area of contribution, and they'll write down what they see as their area of contribution, and then you share with one another and fill in the gaps gently and kindly. Okay, that's number 3. Number 4, what is number 4? Yeah. Robin, why do you think that's important? Why is it important to list past attempts to resolve the issue?
Well, it's probably we've tried over and over again and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to go over that one again. You want to try a new.
Yes. So what was the definition of insanity? That's right. Expecting different results, right? So if you tried the same thing over and over, and have you ever heard parents, I've told you so many times, I've told you 10,000 times. Well, maybe you've got to try a different approach, because if 10,000 times of telling isn't making a change, then it's probably not going to change at 10,001 or 10,002. So this is allowing couples to be real about what they're doing that isn't working. And when you put it on a piece of paper and both look at it, it creates a bit of objectivity. It says, okay, this really isn't working. We need to try something different. So you write down all of the ways that you've attempted to resolve the issue that were not successful. And then step number 5 is the critical step, and this will take a significant amount of time. What does it say there? Yes. How many? How many, Robin?
10.
Say it out loud.
10.
10 ways. But you say, Pastor, can we just do one? No, I'm sorry. It says 10 steps to conflict resolution. You need to give 10 possible solutions. They can be ridiculous. They could be things that you absolutely know are wrong, but you need to write 10. Why? Oftentimes, the first things that we write on there are not the solutions that couples end up choosing in the end. Your first few solutions are going to be your gut reaction and may not be as processed. You need to take the time to write out all 10, because that ensures that you have really put in the brain power to look at all the different possibilities. And don't be afraid to write down the most ridiculous, preposterous, craziest things that you could think of. You might laugh at each other's list as you come up with all sorts of ideas, ways to solve this problem. Yep.
I think it's important to, I started at work and then I try to apply at home. It's important every time when we have a complaint, not to present the complaint, but to have at least 2 solutions. This is what I said at work to everybody. Don't come and complain to me. You come up with 2 solutions. And when I try to apply at home, I say, wait, I don't sound so negative now. I'm coming up with solution. It doesn't sound so bad, then we can work on. So this thing with, it's awesome, trying to find solutions, others.
Yes. So let's do a brainstorm. Problem. What's a problem? Any problem. That's a big problem. Let's pare that one down. You burn the toast in the morning. I really dislike it. Every time we come for breakfast and you're the cook, the toast is burnt. I'm sitting there at the kitchen counter, at the kitchen sink, scraping off the burnt toast just to see the brown under the black. Okay, so you burn the toast. By the way, that doesn't happen in our home. So you burn the toast. Now you come to question number 5. What are 10 solutions to the problem of burnt toast in the morning? Okay, stop toasting.
Turn the toaster thing down.
Oh, okay. Okay, solution number one, turn down the toaster. By the way, for some people, that's the only solution they see. Okay, there's nothing else. Turn it down. Okay. What's another solution? If you got to come up with 10. Don't eat bread. Don't eat bread. Perfect. Okay, what do we call that? An anti-breaditarian? Okay, another solution.
The solution is that you allow to toast just one person. The one that doesn't burn the bread, let that person to toast the bread.
Okay, the person who has a track record of not burning gets to toast from now on.
I hate to use another illustration, but we're in this family world famous. My wife is world famous for burning the rice, always burning rice. And so what I did, I bought her a rice cooker. Solution finished. Stays warm, never burns the rice, and we are happy campers.
There we go. There we go. Buy a new toaster. By the way, I once saw a toaster from Japan that you actually add water to, and it makes perfectly soft toast with, it's like perfectly cooked every single time. Only the Japanese, huh? It's a really cool toaster. I don't know how much it was, though. It was probably unbelievable. Okay, back here. I think we're on solution number 6.
I toast the bread in stages. That way it's crispy.
Oh, staged toasting. Matthew.
I wanted really good bread on my house. Like I'm big on bread.
Yeah.
Romanians. Well, Larissa said, you need to give me a more expensive appliances. So I bought her a nice mixer. Now the bread is perfect.
Solutions. This is great.
I just think, for the most part, you shouldn't walk away when you're cooking.
Okay.
My family does that. They go upstairs and they forget they're cooking.
Don't walk away. That might need a whole nother 10 solutions. How do you keep them from walking away? Handcuff you to the counter. Okay, we're on number 8.
Learn to like burnt toast.
Okay. Very good. Learn to like burnt toast.
Get a toaster oven instead of a toaster.
Okay, get a toaster oven instead of a toaster. One final one. Mary.
Live off grid and don't have a toaster.
There you go. Okay, so we got 10 solutions, and you write them down, and you'll find as you write these 10 solutions, the tension just starts going down and down and down. Do you know why the tension goes down? Because you're no longer focused on the person, but together you're focused on the solution. It takes it from a personal attack to we're working through this together as a couple. This is my teammate. I'm partially blind, they're partially blind, but together we can see a much bigger picture. So the next thing you do is you discuss and evaluate each possibility. How many of you want to live without toast? Okay, that's a few. But that's not going to unite us. How many want to spend a bunch of money to get a more expensive toaster that doesn't burn toast? Okay, we're still divided. Another option. Learn to like burnt toast. How many like that option? Okay, we're getting a few more. So you go back and forth and you ask. Now it's much easier with 2 people versus 70 to come to an agreement. That's why we have smaller committees deciding things, right? Yeah.
Test how it's best, and then tape it. Oh.
Say that again. Somebody's going to benefit from this.
I said, try it out and try your bread. Of course, it varies with the kind of bread you have. Yes. But if you're always using the same kind of bread generally, put tape across it.
So turn the dial to where you like it.
Where the family generally likes it, and so nobody can turn it up and cause it to burn.
All right. Very good. The point is that you and your spouse get to go through this list and you get to narrow it down until you find the one that you both would like to try. This doesn't mean that this is how you do it from now throughout eternity. It just means this is the first thing we're going to try together as a couple. If that doesn't work, what do? You go back to your list of 10 and you try the next thing. And you continue to try the different things that you came up with until you come to one thing that works and fixes the problem. What does this do? It keeps you from repeating the old mistakes, and it gets you both on par with trying to find a way that works for the both of you. And what are we looking for? We're looking for a win-win as a family. And that's where we're going with this. So you discuss and evaluate each of these possibilities. You agree on one solution to try. You agree how you will each work towards this solution. Okay, so Robin, let's say we choose your solution and we're going to turn the knob to a place that everybody agrees on. How will you and David work on this solution? What would be your part?
Well, if it was okay with him, I'd either make a mark so we knew that this was where the family liked it, or I would tape it.
Okay. Very good. David, what's your part?
Just eat it. Don't worry about it.
Good. So now you've agreed on what you both will do to contribute to the solution. What's number 9? Yeah, follow-up is really important. If you do not follow up on this, if you don't set a time and place to discuss whether or not the solution is working, what could happen is that this problem continues to hang there without you both discussing it, and it becomes a continued problem in your relationship later on. So you've got to have a follow-up time and place to discuss this. And you'll agree on saying, let's follow up on this in a week, or let's put it on our calendar in a month, and we'll follow up on this discussion and try and see if we both feel whether or not it's working.
If there's an underlying problem, oftentimes small things come up and cause a problem when that's not the problem. It's something deeper and underneath that's never been resolved. Which do you attack first, the little ones up top, or do you try to really deal with the one that's causing the issue? Yeah.
Well, sometimes what ends up happening is in trying to deal with the deeper problem on your own, what ends up happening is the little ones go unresolved and they build. I think that it would be great to just deal with the little problems with the recognition that we need to set aside some significant time at a later date to deal with the bigger problem. But for now, here's the little one. Let's tackle it together, get that out of the way. There may be situations where you just cannot move on, where there's something else that's much deeper. Those are cases where you may need a third person to jump in and help you as a couple navigate, especially if it's stuff that goes back to your childhood or stuff that goes to, oftentimes it's things that have deeply wounded us in the past and caused a broken way of looking at life. Yeah, I'll go to Mary and then up to Silvana.
I had experience when I was a cook in Alaska for 5.5 weeks, and I was cooking for a work crew, and they wanted the toast. They didn't like the toast in the little oven that I had. It was a tiny little room that I had to cook in, and so the Lord helped with this solution. We went to the thrift store, and I found a Cuisinart wide 4-burner for $4. So the Lord helped me find. So I was just going to say, sometimes praying about the solution, God can help you.
Amen. Which step would we do that at? Yeah. Well, you definitely want to set a time and place, and then when you come to that time and place, you want to sit down and pray about it together. But I would say that it definitely, you could probably pray at each and every step, right? And ask the Lord for direction at each step. Yeah, we'll leave it there. So number 10 is, and this is the final step, don't forget to go back and recognize the contribution that your partner or the other person has made towards resolving this conflict. It was just as much effort for them as it was for you to come up with solutions and to try and resolve this, and it is important to the relationship to recognize that. So when the seas are calmed, you come back and say, thank you for going through these 10 steps with me. Thank you for your part in trying to see things from my side. Thank you for the way you contributed to a solution here. I'd like you to now take some time and give this a practice in your own relationship. So here's what you're going to do. We'll take 10 minutes. You may not be able to get through the whole thing in 10 minutes, but at least it gets you started down this road. So all couples have differences and disagreements. The 10-step model is a simple but effective way to resolve conflict while avoiding common and destructive patterns. Use the model with ongoing issues in your relationship as well as future issues. So start with defining a time and place other than right now, okay? So think of a time and place in the future that would work for both of you and just write that down. You're going to discuss it now, but if you don't get through the whole thing right now, you at least have a time and place that you can bring this discussion to later. So start there, define the problem, work your way through this. In about 10 minutes, we'll have a review of how it went and answer any questions. We're at 10 minutes. Yeah, there you go. Wear out and then go to bed, huh? That's how you do it. Okay, we're going to close up here in just a moment. If you're not all the way through, that's okay. The very first step was to set a time and place where you would come back to it, so you can still come back to it if you've gotten all the way through and you're willing to just share some feedback. That would be fabulous. The last page, I did want to cover that with you before we go to our feedback. It is how to take a time out. And this is really important because unless you have really good control over your emotions, a conflict can escalate very quickly. And it's going to escalate very quickly if your emotions are very high. So in order to avoid conflict escalation, and by the way, a conflict that escalates just makes more conflicts to have to resolve. And so you want to reduce the amount of conflicts that you have to resolve. And the way to do that is by both agreeing that if either person feels that they're not fully in control or their emotions are pretty hot right now, that you just both agree to take a timeout. And a timeout is something that you communicate to the other person because they can't read your mind. So you have to be in touch with your own emotional and mental state and say, I'm too stressed right now. I know we need to talk about this. Can we talk about it at another time, maybe this evening? Can we agree to talk about it this evening because I can't talk about it right now. I need a timeout. Or I can feel myself getting charged right now. I'm trying not to raise my voice, but I can feel it coming. Is there any way we can take a timeout so that I can cool down and we can come back to the conversation in 10 minutes or in an hour? The Bible does counsel that you deal with the conflicts on the day that they arise. And the reason is that you're not as able to remember what the other person said or did or what you said and did. And so there's a lot more room for miscommunication and misunderstanding if you wait a day or a week or a month to resolve things. So it's better to resolve it the day that the conflict arises. That's not always possible, especially if the conflict happens as you're getting into bed. You just might not be able to resolve it right then, but try and resolve it the day of. If you need to take a time out, that should be a healthy part of every relationship, is to be able to put a pause and say, we're going to come back to this. And here's the caveat though. If you're going to pause the conversation, you have to agree on when you're going to come back to it. There has to be an agreement there in order to pause. So, yes, I'm going to pause, but I'm going to come back. Let's come back to it in an hour. Does that work with you? And if there can be an agreement there and it's not just hanging, then you're okay. Okay. Any feedback on the conflict resolution 10-step process? Did you find it beneficial? Did you resolve the burnt toast? What happened? Any voluntary feedback?
Nice to be in conversation.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And you were able to just kind of talk together. Great. Anyone else find it helpful? Yeah? Good. Good. Which step do you feel is the most important step in the 10 steps? What was it?
Brainstorm 10 solutions.
Brainstorming 10 solutions. Was it difficult? Did anybody find it difficult to get 10? Yes. Not enough time, right. But notice, it was difficult, and yet as you continued to work at it, you continued to come up with solutions that you didn't think of in the first 2 or 3. And that's the purpose. When you are forced to put down 10 solutions, it activates the creativity part of your brain and your spouse's brain, and you both are now fully engaged working on the problem, working on a solution together rather than trying to work through personal whatevers. Yeah.
I think defining the problem may be the most difficult part, because the argument may be the burnt toast, but underneath it there's a lot more layers that are the real problem.
Yes. Yes.
Which is what you need to get to if you want to make progress, because otherwise you'll fight about the burnt toast today and about the keys being lost tomorrow and about whatever else.
Yes.
That are all superficial issues, but they may reflect a much deeper.
So if I were to role play with you, Soren, I might say, or you might say, the problem is the burnt toast. If I'm really looking for the root problem, what am I going to do? I'm going to pause and say, okay, what I hear you saying is that it's the burnt toast, but is that really what you see the problem is, or is there something more? Because your goal is to find out what the real central problem is. And they may say, hey, the problem actually isn't the burnt toast. The problem is the look on your face when you eat my burnt toast. Or the problem is what you say as you're eating my burnt toast. That's the real problem. I'm hurt by how you react to the burnt toast. So it's not even the burnt toast, it's how you're reacting to the burnt toast.
Right, or maybe you don't wake up early enough to make the toast right, so you're just doing stuff quickly, or maybe it's, you stayed up last night doing something else when you should have been going to bed early, and then you would have had more time to make the burnt toast, or maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be a million different issues.
Yeah. So don't try and rush through it. It should take time. Matthew? Take the time to really get to the bottom and listen to one another. Go ahead.
So when Luis and I were talking here, the verse came to me from Proverbs 15. A soft answer turns away wrath. Turns away. Turns away. And I think that's the number one thing, because probably she's right. Probably I'm right. But it's like you said, the reaction is number one, keeping the reaction down. And that's what God wants us to do with everything we're doing. It starts in our relationship and it goes out from the home. If we're able to do that at home, then we're able to win people. And you want to win your partner. But
Yes.
And the other thing is try to get perspective, like from what we were talking about, is like there's things that matter to her that probably don't matter to me because I'm not seeing it. So the best thing is to slow down and then put myself in her shoes as much as possible to see her perspective, because I can't see in the lens that she's seeing.
Yes.
If you work on that, then I feel like you can work through and probably find the problem that way, because like I said, we don't always see what the other person sees.
And in order to see her perspective, you've got to take time to ask questions. Like, tell me more about that. Okay, so you're saying this, but it's not fully making sense to me. Can you explain that a little bit more? Investing that time will return a ton in relationship credits. Okay, Bill, and then
Sometimes the problem is not just the burnt toast, but she may have 50 different things going on at once. And sometimes that happens. Put the toast in, doing this, do the laundry, run around. Maybe it's my problem. Get up and take care of the toast, and not her doing that stuff. Let her run around, do the things, and then won't have a problem with burnt toast, because I'll be taking care of it.
If that's the issue, you're going to solve your problem just at step number 2, defining the problem. Because as you're talking about it, you're going to say, well, wait a minute. You're doing the laundry, you're doing this, you're doing that. That's why the burnt toast is there. If you just stop doing those sorts of things, or if I take over half of these things, we'll solve this issue.
So Kevin and I were coming from different cultures and educations, and even our families were very different. So we had a bunch of things that were different and a bunch of situations of conflict. So we figured out after a while that we do need to follow some principles. So, for example, about major decisions, we said that if we don't both agree, if we don't both like their property or we don't like the car, then we are not going to get it. So we have one principle for any major decision in life, we both need to like it, then or to agree about. And another principle is there are some things which are not so important in life and somehow we need to come halfway. And I'll give you now a funny example. So I like light colors and Kevin likes them dark. So every time we need to paint the house, it's a problem because he wants these dark walls and I want them light. So the compromise was with one of the homes that we had the same colors, but the shades were different. We mixed them. So, so when we sold the house, and it was the time like 10 years ago or 15 years ago with the contrast was, when we sold the house and we gave the owners, well, this wall has these two colors and that wall has those two colors. But, we came halfway and we resolved the problem.
That's great. That's great. Okay. Well, I think the biggest thing with conflict resolution is both coming to the Lord with a humble attitude and saying, Lord, we want your help. We both come to this whole thing not seeing the whole picture. We need your help to help us see each other's picture and be willing to see through the other person's lens. The last thing I want to leave you with is something that an elder told me some time ago. He said in any couple that he counseled, he said there wasn't just 2 points of view. There was her view, his view, my view, and then he said, and then there's the truth. And he said, nobody has the full picture, not even the third person who's coming in to counsel the couple. Said the only one who has the full picture is God. And so when you leave God out of the mix, you're missing a good part of the picture. He's the one that can help you see what you both can't see on your own. So just remember, there's her view, there's his view, there's my view, and then there's the truth, and that's God's view. All right, let's close in prayer, shall we? Father in heaven, thank you for the beautiful sunshine outside. I pray that you would bless us now as we continue to enjoy your Sabbath, and I pray that you would bless every relationship here. May each one of these relationships prosper under your guiding hand. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.